Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today is March 10th, 2025, and unfortunately, we've had another fatal air ambulance crash, this time out of Mississippi Air Care, which is occurred just northeast of Jackson, Mississippi. We don't really know much, but we can take a look at what we do know. So stick around, stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, so let's take a look at what's being reported.
With Madison County Sheriff Randy Tucker, who told us there were 3 fatalities. We know that the helicopter had dropped off a patient at UMMC, refueled, and was heading back to Columbus before the crash.
Now, at the time, I mean, they said 1, but there are 3 fatalities that's been confirmed. And this particular aircraft is November 835 Charlie Sierra, which I don't know. It's kind of strange that it's got Charlie in the name. You guys know Charlie. He's one of my best friends. He's been here on the show before, very well-known flight paramedic who works for this service. So obviously my heart dropped the second I heard that it was this service. I called him and he answered the phone. And so my buddy Charlie's okay. But unfortunately, there were 3 fatalities. That has been confirmed that the pilot, flight paramedic, and a flight nurse did pass away in this crash. Now, this crash happened at about 12:40 local time. There was no patient on board. Now, the pilot is a MedTrans employee, and so this is going to be a MedTrans hospital-based system with MedTrans and the University of Mississippi. You guys probably heard of MedTrans before. They're a huge service that falls under the GMR umbrella. GMR is going to have AMR for their ambulance side of things, but then also many fixed wing services and rotor wings under the air ambulance side of things. And the community-based stuff is going to be mostly like AirEvac and Reach and Eagle Med and stuff like that. But their hospital-based stuff, a lot of that stuff is under MedTrans. And so very, very big service. Lots of aircraft. They fly EC-135s, 145s, H-130s, and a lot of A-Stars and Bell 407s as well, all across the country. Now, this particular helicopter is leased from MedTrans. And again, like I said, through the University of Mississippi. If you look up this tail number, you might see that it's used to have the CalStar livery, the big flight service out in California. But CalStar was eventually merged or purchased with Reach, which is under the GMR family, and that's kind of how this helicopter came under the GMR umbrella. And so, the hospital that we're going to be talking about is the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and these folks here just, have absolutely high standards. And this, to me, this is what I call a premier program. They just have big, strong, fast helicopters with redundancy, with twin engines and, stretchers in the back, because they have 4 helicopters around the state with a couple EC-135s, a couple EC-145s. Been around since the 90s. They used to be super hardcore with the Bell 222s. I mean, they're still hardcore now, but they flew the Bell 222, which was, super cool. They previously had partnered with PHI. Not a problem or anything like that, but that's who they previously partnered with. So sometimes you see the PH on their older tail numbers. And now like I said, they've been with MedTrans for quite a while now, and it's been a great relationship. But overall, this is a great service with great people and a wonderful organization. And they've never had a fatal helicopter crash, in about 30 years. And so that was something to brag about. You don't really want to brag about that, I guess, on a day like today, but nonetheless, the point is that they've had a very good safety record. And so here's the aircraft here. This is a beautiful livery, beautiful aircraft, EC-135. There's thousands, well, not thousands. I think there's about 1,500 EC-135s that have been built. So there's a lot of them around the world. It's a very, very safe aircraft, very, very capable aircraft. This particular one is a 2012 model. It's an EC-135 P2 Plus. So this was before Airbus came in and took over and called it an H-135. And so the P2 just signifies that it's got the Pratt & Whitney engines. These are the PW206B2 engines. These engines do have FADEC. They still have the throttles on them in case of of a full FADEC failure, but it does have FADEC, and they put out about 650 horsepower each on both of the engines. So you're talking about 1,300 horsepower or so. So it's a powerful aircraft. And like I said, they've built like 1,500 of these. It's a good aircraft, has the rear stretcher load. In cases like this where there's no patient on board, it's highly likely that there was a paramedic or a nurse who was sitting up front and to the left of the pilot. And so this particular aircraft goes by AirCare 3. They're based out of Columbus, which is, I don't know, maybe about an hour, 45 minutes northeast, maybe not quite that far, northeast of Jackson in Columbus, Mississippi. And they had just picked up a patient. They picked up a transfer, and they were coming down to the university hospital to drop off a patient. And then they started, they picked up some fuel. They've got a big center, which I'll show you in a second, did some refueling, and they were headed home when this accident happened. When we come here to the weather and we look at the METAR for this time, again, like I said, the Jackson Airport is right there. They basically flew right across the northern end of it. And if we're looking at about 1654 to 1754, somewhere in there, Zulu time, and you can see that the winds were 350, 7 knots, 10 miles of visibility. It was clear out. The temperature 17 degrees with 5 degrees for the dew point. I mean, this is perfect weather. No clouds under 12,000 feet. It was absolutely beautiful out for the weather. And then when we're looking at stuff like this, when we're talking about medical helicopters, I'm always going to take a look at what the bird activity was. Because like I said, I told you recently, we had a fatal air ambulance crash here with Air Evac Life Team where some gooses, took out a Bell 206 and had 3 fatalities on it. So it is something to look at. So when you come over here to the Aviation Hazard Advisory System and you just look at the Jackson International Airport here, it's yellow. What does yellow mean? That just means that there is a moderate risk. So low is the lowest risk. And moderate it just means that there's a moderate risk in the area. But you can also come over here to this live radar kind of looking thing that they show you over here at birdcast.info. And if we look at this for March 10th, we can see that there is some heavy bird migration, but not over here in Mississippi. It's pretty heavy going through Texas and Oklahoma right now. So if you're in the Midwest and you're watching this, pay attention to that, because there is obviously some migratory bird activity going on in the Midwest part of the country, but it doesn't look like really there's anything over Mississippi. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't have happened. It just means that there's not a heavy forecast. Okay, and so when we jump over here to the ADS-B data, you can see that earlier in the day, this aircraft had taken off from its home base somewhere up here in Columbus. I don't know if it's at this airport, but they picked up a patient, whether by ambulance or by one of the local hospitals, and they turn around and they head southwest towards Jackson. And so they fly down here, and there were some inconsistencies in some of the reporting that I've seen already. And I think that's just because their home base is kind of located next to an airport. And you can see that they landed here, and I think this is Baptist Hospital, which is down on the south side of downtown of Jackson, Mississippi. They dropped their patient off. And then they flew over to this area over here. They may have landed directly at the hospital to either refuel or pick something up, or maybe grab a snack. I mean, it is their hospital system. And you can see that over here, there was a report that they went to St. Dominic, and I don't know if that's true. I mean, this is the main hospital over here. It's on the bottom left, and there's another hospital over here, St. Dominic. But right here where you see this H is their actual home base. And if you flip over to the Google Maps, you can kind of get a little bit better look at it. Over here is going to be the big university hospital center and their normal landing pad. They mean this giant landing pad on the roof right here. And then that St. Dominic is up here to the top right. But one of their bases is right here, which is super cool. They call it the Mississippi Center for Emergency services, where a lot of their disaster teams are, but they do, it's a pretty cool facility, and they may have just flown over here. I don't know, but it looks like they took the patient over here to Baptist Hospital and then flew over here to either their main hospital or over here to this base over here where the emergency center is, and that's where their MedCom is as well. And that's when they took off on their final flight. And so we can follow their flight along here. This is going to be the accident flight. We'll zoom back out. There is no patient on board, and so they kind of fly around for a little bit. You know, no telling why it is that they're making those couple turns, but they get on their track to head home, and they fly right over this Ross Barnett reservoir. And everything looks good. You can see their speed over here. They're climbing. The elevation around Jackson, Mississippi is about 250 feet. And so they get up pretty good. They get up to 2,600 feet, which is, you know, about 2,300 feet, which, you know me, I love that. That means you're flying high enough to avoid the birds. Altitude is your friend. You're not cruising along at 300 feet where you're not giving yourself any room for error. And they speed up to about 126 knots. Flying over the reservoir, and then when they get to the end here over this super wooded area, this is where everything goes wrong, and they crash into this heavily wooded area. We can turn on these data points right here and kind of take a look at least some of the points they have related to their speed. Now, as they're flying along right here, I mean, this is about a 25-minute flight, 26-minute flight. You can see they're flying at about 125 knots. 2,500 foot, you know, which is probably about 2,300 foot above the ground. And we don't see any inconsistencies really, right? 128 knots, 123, 127, 128, you know, staying right around 24 to 2,500 feet. And as we zoom in here and get a little bit more specific, we can see that somewhere, we'll slow this down just a little bit. Somewhere right about here, maybe a little bit further down, right about here. See, they're at 2,500 feet. Everything looks good. There's really not much of a descent or anything like that. And I think it's probably when they get about past this data point right here, they start to slow down, and then just look at this rate of descent. Goes like 5,300 a minute, 5,000 feet a minute. That is an astronomically fast descent rate. I mean, normally when these guys are landing, especially if they have patients on board, they're, you know, they might be approaching at like maybe 500 feet a minute. And then, you know, as they get a couple hundred feet off the ground, they're only going like 300 feet a minute. And if you were going to do like an auto rotation or something like that, you're talking 1,500 feet a minute, 2,000 feet a minute. And that's not the whole time. That's just, you know, during the auto rotation part of things. But they're doing 5,000, 4,000, 3,700 feet a minute. This aircraft is, to me, it's coming out of the sky pretty quickly. And it's turning. I don't know whether or not the pilot is turning it on purpose or if it's just spinning out of the sky, and we don't know. It doesn't really seem to slow down. You see, it's at like 4,000 feet a minute, just, you know, a couple hundred feet off the ground. And so it appears to me that this aircraft had a violent impact with the ground, and it may some type of catastrophic failure. Just absolutely terrible to see that happen. So let's input that data into Google over here and see if we can get a little bit better of a visual of the actual track as it zooms in. And so again, here's their track, and I kind of move it up here a little bit. And it looks a little weird here because they're flying, you know, from this area here over to this area. And, you know, I just think that they just dropped their patient off. They're stopping at the hospital, they're stopping at their area to get fuel, and then they're taking off again and heading home. And so we can kind of see, I know it gives you a little airplane instead of a helicopter, which is too bad. But you can see they basically are following this interstate I-55 for a little bit, and they loop out, and then they head home and they start flying out over the lake. We'll zoom out a little bit to get this track going across the lake. And you can see everything looks good. There's really no major changes or anything like that. And then when they get over Highway 43 here and into this marshland is where They have this rapid descent that you can see here, and they kind of level out for a little bit. It kind of looks like right here, but you can see there's multiple points here where this aircraft is just going down super fast. And again, just like that Airlink crash that happened recently over on the East Coast, right into a wooded area, which again makes it hard for rescuers to find them. But I think enough people saw this. It was during the day. The weather's great outside. They were actually able to get there very quickly. And unfortunately, there were 3 fatalities. And so who knows what happened? You know, the NTSB is there. They're going to be doing an in-depth investigation. Medtrans, I'm sure, has some type of data point recoveries that are on here, whether it's a cockpit voice recorder. I'm not sure if they use cockpit video recorders or not, but there's probably going to be quite a bit of data that they can pull off that aircraft, assuming that it's still available. So we'll wait a couple weeks to get some type of preliminary report from the NTSB, but who knows? There's a million things that could have happened. All I can really tell from this is just that this aircraft came out of the sky in a catastrophic fashion. They went down fast, and they had altitude, which again, altitude is your friend. But if it's some type of catastrophic failure, it's obviously not going to matter, and it's just absolutely devastating. But you know, these people are a team. These flight paramedics and nurses at Air Care there at the University of Mississippi, along with their Medtrans pilots and their mechanics. I mean, these people are a team. Okay, and they're hurting, and their families are grieving, and my heart absolutely breaks for every single one of them. I hope we can start learning more and more from these accidents. I hope that this accident gives us another data point to prevent the next one from happening. This is all I can hope for when you have terrible tragedies like this that happen. So let's hope that we can get as much data as possible. Let's hope that we learn from it. Let's hope that everybody hugs and loves their kids tonight and all their loved ones. And, we'll see you on the next episode.